P-O-T-A-T-O. Potato, said the sixth grade student, excitedly and correctly spelling the word potato. There was a mistake in this event, though. You see, the vice president, Dan Quayle, at the time, sat in the sixth grade classroom. Actually, the word potato requires an extra E at the end of it, he said. Dan Quayle was wrong, but this small mistake he made, televised to millions of Americans across the nation and spreading to millions more through newspapers the following day, fatally destroyed his political career. This is an example of a principle. Even a small mistake in a phrase or a word can completely destroy a politician or political party's chances. Today, we'll look at one of these phrases. Defund ICE. Today's question is, are defund ICE debates the same as defund the police? To answer this question, we'll first look at what it means to defund ICE. Second, we'll talk about defund the police. And third, we'll look at whether these 2 points are similar. So let's start with this. Our defund ICE, what does it mean to defund ICE? Well, let's start with a description of ICE. ICE stands for ICE, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement. What this agency does is effectively track down illegal immigrants and deport them out of the United States. That is, this ICE is differentiated from Border Patrol, which actively patrols the border and makes sure that illegal immigrants do not cross. ICE patrols within American cities and in the interior of America, checking for illegal immigrants. Donald Trump has more and more weaponized ICE, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement, to deport illegal immigrants in a way that his predecessors and previous presidents have not done. This has aroused anger from Democrats and others who disagree with President Donald Trump, resulting in calls to abolish or defund ICE. These politicians are angry about the actions that ICE has taken and believe that the correct course is to abolish or defund ICE. This would result in ICE completely disappearing from America. So, when looking at this, we can see that Fox on January 15, 2026 reported that some Democrats are actually concerned about this specific proposal to defund ICE. A Democratic senator from Arizona, Ruben Gallego, Fox reports, said that he worries defund ICE sounds similar to defund the police. And as Ruben Gallego points out, defund the police was an extremely unpopular opinion for Democrats to take in the past. So Ruben Gallego worries that defunding ICE is simply too extreme of a position for Democrats to take. The New York Magazine on January 21, 2026, in one of their articles, writes that there is a divide between Democrat politicians on whether or not to defund ICE or simply to radically reform it. It reports that in the actual Democrat, when polling actual Democrats, 77% of actual Democrats say that they are in favor of abolishing ICE. However, only 50% of the general population is in support of abolishing ICE, while another 50% opposes this measure. So we see that in the Democrat Party, this is actually fairly popular, but in the general population, this is not. And as Ruben Gallego voiced his concerns about the similarity of defund ICE and defund the police, let's move on to our second point. What exactly does it mean to defund the police, and why is this an unpopular opinion? You see, in 2020, following the killing of George Floyd in a controversial setting by police officers in Minneapolis, where a black man was killed by police officers, that sparked major protests and riots across America under the flag of the Black Lives Matter movement. Many of the advocates for this movement declared that the only solution to protect black people in America was to, quote, defund the police, unquote. This policy was partially embraced by many Democrat politicians. However, as Ruben Gallego noted, this was extremely unpopular to the general population and never caught on, in fact hurting Democrats in the 2022 midterm election. So now that we've seen that defund the police is a very unpopular opinion, let's move on to our third question for today. Are these two policies similar? Is it similar? Is similar to defunding ICE similar to defunding the police? Well, one interesting difference we see between these two organizations is that police tend to be local organizations composed of people actually living in those towns or cities, whereas ICE tends to be federal, so under the president's control who rove across the country according to the president's directions. So obviously there's that one distinction already. Similarly, ICE is focused on deporting illegal immigrants, while the police are focused on more normal policing measures. So those who are in favor of normal policing but may be more favorable towards illegal immigration might be okay with the police, but more opposed to ICE's actions. One quote I like to keep in mind when looking at situations like this is a quote from Edmund Burke, a political theorist, in his book Reflections on the Revolution in France. He wrote this right after the French Revolution over 2 centuries ago, where he said that one of the problems when we consider abolishing or defunding entire institutions, he says, is to, quote, mistake deviation from the principle for the principle, unquote. So what he means by this is that change and reform are, of course, generally not terrible principles. However, change and reform from the principle do not mean that those should be the principle. We shouldn't abolish our entire society just because change should sometimes be good. We must carefully measure why change is necessary and how much of it will actually achieve good. And of course, that should be our principle regarding whether or not we should defund ICE and defund the police. We can only hope that the Democrat Party does not take this too far and that a single phrase doesn't wreck their entire reputation.